Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. As part of continuous efforts to strengthen the defense posture against evolving threats coming from North Korea, Seoul and Washington are staging joint key summertime military drills named the Ulji Freedom Shield. Marking the first anniversary of the Camp David summit, the leaders of South Korea, the U.S. and Japan once again endorsed their trilateral commitment to cooperate and stand together against the North's deepening nuclear threats. Talks are reportedly ongoing for a leaders' summit on the sidelines of a multilateral conference later this year. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has the lead in the nationwide polls against former President Donald Trump, ahead of the 2024 Democratic National Convention, where Harris is set to formally accept the party's nomination. Starting today, South Korea and the U.S. launch an annual summertime military exercise aimed at countering North Korea's increasing missile threats and cyber attacks. Our Pins explains further.
A major combined military exercise between Seoul and Washington officially kicked off on Monday. The 11-day Ulji Freedom Shield exercise that's set to take place in South Korea until next Thursday includes computer-based simulation and combined field training exercises, focusing on bolstering the Allies' defense posture against threats from Pyongyang. It also includes civil defense drills involving government agencies with exercises that simulate a nuclear attack from North Korea for the first time this year. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff also said this year's exercise will involve some 19,000 South Korean troops and that it plans to carry out more combined field training. There will be a total of 48 outdoor drills, which is 10 more than last year, including field maneuvers and live-fire exercises. The military also said the exercise will further strengthen the Allies' capability and readiness to defend against North Korea's weapons of mass destruction by utilizing a variety of assets on land, at sea, in the air, as well as in cyberspace. Meanwhile, military officials from Seoul and Washington are watching closely for a potential provocation from North Korea, as Pyongyang has been strongly criticizing the large-scale military exercises, calling them a rehearsal for an invasion. Heunji, Arirang News.
And with the start of the Ulji Freedom Shield military exercise, President Yoon emphasized its importance, saying anti-state forces are operating in the dark throughout society. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
먼저 허위 정보와 가짜 뉴스 유포, 사이버 공격과 같은 북한의 회색지대 도발에 대한 대응 태세를 강화해야 합니다. 우리 사회 내부에는 자유민주주의 체제를 위협하는 반국가 세력들이 곳곳에서 암약하고 있습니다.
Now, this came on Monday as Yoon opened a cabinet meeting where he also said the purpose of such actions is to divide the nation and confuse people. He said war could break out at any time and asked the public to follow the government's instructions on evacuation and traffic controls during the exercise period. The president also noted the beginning of the second school semester and expanded the operation of Nilbom School. That's a public after-school program to help working parents. In addition, he took the opportunity to tout South Korean Olympians after their successful Paris campaign, while giving encouragement to South Korea's Paralympians. Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo marked 1 year since their leaders held a trilateral camp summit at Camp David last year, where they agreed to strengthen and broaden their cooperation beyond the security in the region. Our Oh Soo-young tells us more.
The leaders of South Korea, the United States and Japan reaffirmed their resolve to tackling North Korea's nuclear threat and other regional and global challenges as they seek to preserve commitments made at their Camp David summit last year. In a joint statement to mark 1 year since their first ever standalone trilateral meeting, President Yoon Suk-yeol, US President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida on Sunday said they remain inspired by the spirit of Camp David and the Camp David principles as a roadmap for cooperation, as well as the commitment to consult on threats and challenges to their collective interests and security.
Previously limited to traditional security areas, the scope of trilateral cooperation has become comprehensive to include economic security, advanced technology, cybersecurity, development, and human exchanges.
According to Seoul's Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Tae-ho, major achievements include a real-time system for sharing North Korean missile warning information, the first ever multi-domain Freedom Edge exercise between their militaries, and the establishment of a trilateral security cooperation framework. The three countries have also been making progress on economic security dialogue, early warning systems to stabilize supply chains, space security dialogue, quantum research, and youth exchanges. The most significant outcome of the Camp David summit has been to set in stone that trilateral cooperation by establishing annual meetings between leaders, national security advisors, and ministers of foreign affairs, defense, and trade. Such efforts to institutionalize the Camp David framework are becoming all the more important, as Japan and the US will have new leaders take office in the coming months.
This trilateral cooperation was attainable under the top-down approach, which was initiated by three leaders. In this sense, if domestic politics are changed, this architecture might be affected. In short, this type of top-down approach is rarely expected any longer if three leaders are gone or become weaker in their political power. In this vein, a key question should be whether a bottom-up approach can function as an alternative to a top-down approach in the era of post-three leaders.
A senior Korean official on Sunday said Washington and Tokyo value the importance of the South Korea-US alliance and South Korea-Japan relations, as well as the significance of Camp David, indicating that their support for the Camp David mechanism remains sturdy, regardless of political changes. Still, the official acknowledged the need to create the institutional infrastructure to ensure the three-way partnership is stable in the mid to long term, adding that the three governments are sharing their views on launching a trilateral cooperation secretariat. While discussions on holding a leaders' summit are in the early stages, the annual gathering is likely to take place on the sidelines of a multilateral conference later this year. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris continues to lead former President Donald Trump in nationwide polls, going into the Democratic Party's national convention, which will secure her as the party's presidential candidate. Lee Jae-myung has more.
Just a day before the Democratic Party's national convention kicks off in Chicago on Monday, another nationwide poll on the upcoming U.S. presidential election shows Vice President Kamala Harris leading former President Donald Trump. In the poll conducted jointly by Washington Post, ABC, and Ipsos on 2,335 adults nationwide from August 9th to the 13th and released on Sunday, the Harris-Walz camp leads the Trump-Vance camp 49% to 45% among registered voters, while the vice president has a 51% to 45% lead over Trump among likely voters. However, the latest poll shows that Trump leads Harris when it comes to some key issues in the United States. Respondents believe that Trump would do a better job in dealing with issues like the economy, inflation, immigration, and the prolonged conflict in the Middle East. When it comes to other issues like healthcare, abortion, and race relations, Harris has a double-digit lead over Trump. The latest poll also shows that Harris is enjoying growing support from swing voters. While Trump previously had a 4 percentage point lead over Joe Biden from independents in July, Sunday's poll showed that Harris has an 11 percentage point lead over Trump. Considered the classic swing voters, independents have gone with the winner in 9 of the last 12 presidential elections. Harris has seen slight leads over Trump in a number of other nationwide polls, but many pundits believe it's still too close to predict the outcome of November's election. While Harris officially won the Democratic presidential nomination in an online vote 2 weeks ago, she will accept the party's nomination and give her acceptance speech on Thursday, the last day of the 4-day national convention. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
Amid Gaza ceasefire negotiations that have been underway since last week, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Tel Aviv on Sunday, marking his 9th trip to Israel since October 2023. Now, he's set to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu before heading to Egypt for ceasefire talks. Ian Jin reports.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in the Israeli capital of Tel Aviv on Sunday with hopes of securing a Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal. But just hours after landing, Hamas raised doubts over an agreement being reached. After 2 days of talks in Doha last week, the mediating countries, Qatar, the United States, and Egypt, delivered the latest proposal to Hamas. The Palestinian group's response on Sunday was that the proposal was aligned with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's recent positions, saying that he refuses to end the war and withdraw Israeli forces from Gaza, including along the border with Egypt. Hamas reiterated that these were two conditions the group sees as the basis for any agreement, and said Netanyahu is responsible for thwarting the efforts of mediators by delaying the reaching of an agreement. Meanwhile, Netanyahu insists that pressure should be put on Hamas and not Israel, adding that the militant group did not send a delegation for ceasefire talks. Blinken is set to meet senior Israeli leaders, including the Prime Minister, on Monday. And following his meetings in Israel, Blinken will move on to Cairo for further talks in an effort to close the gap between Israel and Hamas to reach an agreement. Meanwhile, violence continued in Gaza on Sunday. Palestinian health authorities said Israeli airstrikes killed at least 21 people in Gaza, including 6 children. 이은진, Arirang News.
Here in South Korea, the Democratic Party on Sunday launched its new leadership at its national convention. Now, as widely expected, Lee Jae-myung was once again elected leader, securing an overwhelming majority of votes. Our correspondent Shin-young reports.
At its national convention on Sunday at the K-SPO Dome in Songpagu district of southeastern Seoul, the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea announced its new leadership. Lee Jae-myung secured his second term with a landslide victory, winning 85.4% of the vote and beating 2 other candidates. He broke his own record set 2 years ago for the highest vote share ever for a DP leader and became the first leader in 24 years to serve 2 consecutive terms. The results were based on votes from dues-paying party members, which accounted for 56%, 14% from party delegates, and the remaining 30% coming from public opinion polls. In his acceptance speech, Lee emphasized the importance of improving people's livelihoods.
We will become a more competent party dedicated to improving people's livelihoods. Let's unite the wisdom and strength of our members and the public to build a better and new South Korea.
He also offered to meet with President Yoon to discuss pending state affairs. And during the national convention, 5 Supreme Council members, Kim Min-seok, Chun Hyun-hee, Han Jun-ho, Kim Byung-ju, and Lee Yeon-ju were also elected. They are considered hardline supporters of Lee Jae-myung, creating a leadership that is strongly aligned with him. Although Lee Jae-myung's second term has begun, his legal challenges are expected to remain significant variables as he currently faces several court battles. These include corruption charges related to property development projects during his time as mayor of Seongnam City, as well as allegations of his involvement in illegal money transfers to North Korea. His first court verdict on election law violation charges is expected in October.
With Lee now chosen as the new leader, he's expected to focus on both improving people's livelihoods and taking a strong stance against the government as key elections lie ahead, including the presidential election in 2027. Shin-young, Arirang News.
KTX services have resumed between Daegu and Gyeongju following a derailment on Sunday. Korail has announced repairs have been completed, and normal services on Monday have resumed from the first train of the day. On Sunday at 4:38 p.m., a KTX Sancheon train heading to Busan from Seoul derailed when one of its wheels went off the tracks near Gomo Station in Daegu. All 384 passengers were safely transferred and no injuries were reported. After the derailment, hundreds of people crowded Dongdaegu Station in the heat, experiencing significant inconvenience. The South Korean Baseball League set a new single-season attendance record on Sunday. The Korea Baseball Organization announced that on Sunday alone, over 91,000 spectators gathered across 5 stadiums around the country. Now, that brought this season's total attendance to approximately 8.47 million, which is the highest ever, breaking the previous record set in 2017. The new record comes with about 80% of the 720 scheduled games played so far, with 147 games remaining. Despite the ongoing heat wave across South Korea, the season is expected to reach 10 million spectators for the first time. More than 400 years ago, Korea saw an invasion from Japan known as the Imjin War. Now, a key to stopping that invasion was Joseon's victory in a naval battle. And every year, a special event is taking place to honor this battle and the hero behind the victory. Our An Sung-jin headed south to learn more about the history of that battle.
1592, Japan's Hideyoshi regime invaded the Korean peninsula. It took just 20 days for Japan to capture the Joseon capital, Hanyang. But one battle changed the course of the war. That battle was won by Korea's greatest naval leader, Admiral Lee Jae-myung. The narrow waters below me is where Admiral Lee Jae-myung achieved his famous maritime victory using the islands and bays of Korea's southern coastline to his advantage. The Battle of Hansan Island was crucial in bringing back the momentum for Korea. And to honor this, every year, the south coast city of Tongyeong hosts the Hansan Battle Festival.
This festival is not about eating, drinking, and merely having fun. It inherits the spirit of Admiral Lee, which was about being loyal to the country, loving his people, and being loyal to one's parents. This festival should be known beyond our country.
This year is the 63rd festival. The 6-day festival covers as much of the city as it can, hosting events by the port, in the city, and in other areas.
And I really like Korean traditions, and I also wanted to learn more about the history. I knew about Isun-shin General, but I did not know about this battle, so I also got to learn and to enjoy the tradition, so that's why I came.
The highlight is a historical reenactment of the Battle of Hansan Island.
조선의 수군들이야! 죽기를 각오하면 반드시 살 것이오. 살기를 동하면 패전하여 반드시 죽을 것이다.
Among the ships is the well-known Kobukson, or turtle ship. A warship used by the Korean Navy, its name derives from its metal covering, which resembles a turtle shell. These ships, alongside Panokson warships, were used in South Korea's strategic attacks to destroy the Japanese fleets. When the Japanese Navy arrived, Admiral Lee Sun-shin ordered the Korean Navy to spread its ships into a crane wing shape known as hagikjin. Despite Korea having fewer ships, it destroyed many Japanese ships and cut off Japan's supply of food and weapons. The Joseon Naval Headquarters that Admiral Lee commanded was first established on Hansan-do Island and later on moved to Tongyeong.
Tongyeong as a whole used to be the headquarters itself. There was no war as devastating as the Imjin War. We were able to win because Admiral Lee put his life out there. The war was on the sea, and we had both the Kobukson and Panokson warships.
Saebyongwan Hall, which is the main building and the only building remaining after the annexation by Japan, literally translates to Hall of Washing Weapons, which showed hope that the war would end soon and peace would prosper. The city of Tongyeong is famous for its beautiful coastal surroundings. But what makes it really special is the culture and history, especially the great victory that became a foundation for Korea today. An Sung-jin, Arirang News, Tongyeong.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. Ukraine continues its incursion into Russia's Kursk region, with the Ukrainian Air Force commander saying that it had destroyed a second strategic Russian bridge in a week. Ukraine's military on Sunday released aerial footage of the strike on a bridge reportedly over the same river in Zvanoye, the second bridge in the same region to be destroyed after another strategic bridge on Friday. Ukrainian Air Force commander Mykola Oleshchuk said that the aerial strikes will deprive the enemy of logistical capabilities, which significantly affects the course of hostilities. Ukraine is nearly 2 weeks into the biggest incursion into Russian territory seen since the Second World War. Kyiv says it has seized over 80 settlements across more than 1,000 square kilometers in the Kursk region since its surprise attack on August 6th. The Kremlin has vowed to retaliate, calling the Ukrainian incursion into Russian territory a major provocation. Thailand's new Prime Minister, Paetongtarn Shinawatra, was endorsed by the country's king on Sunday, officially confirming her new position 2 days after Parliament voted in her favour. 37-year-old Paetongtarn was approved by Thailand's king, Maha Vajiralongkorn, in a formal ceremony in Bangkok after winning nearly 2/3 of the vote in the House of Representatives on Friday. The daughter of divisive former Prime Minister and billionaire Thaksin Shinawatra, she became the youngest Prime Minister of Thailand only days after her predecessor was dismissed by the Constitutional Court. On Saturday, the new PM's father was granted an amnesty by the king from serving the remainder of an 8-year sentence for graft and abuse of power. Paetongtarn is the third member of her family to serve as a prime minister after her father and aunt. Large protests in India over a trainee doctor's rape and murder continued on Sunday despite the Indian Medical Association calling for an end to the strikes. Indian junior doctors marched on the streets of Kolkata with thousands of people who came out in solidarity on Sunday evening, chanting, "We want justice." A day before, on Saturday, a 24-hour strike organized by the Indian Medical Association had more than 1 million people expected to join, forcing hospitals and clinics across the country to turn away non-emergency patients. The Indian Medical Association described the rape and murder of 31-year-old female junior doctor around 10 days ago a crime of barbaric scale due to the lack of safe spaces for women, telling the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in a letter that as 60% of India's doctors are women, safety and security measures are required to ensure the safety of their staff. Famed French actor Alain Delon, once described as the most beautiful man in cinema, died on Sunday, aged 88. He had reportedly been suffering poor health since a stroke in 2019, rarely leaving his estate in France's Val-de-Loire region. With his striking blue eyes, Delon was known for his on-screen tough guy persona in hits including Borsalino and The Samurai. French President Emmanuel Macron paid tribute to Delon on Sunday, saying the actor had made the world dream, while actress Brigitte Bardot said Delon's death left a huge void. Born just outside of Paris on November 8, 1935, Delon made almost 90 films during his career. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The extreme heat is showing no sign of easing up with a record-breaking stretch of consecutive tropical nights. Heat continues today with passing rain in the forecast for southern provinces and Gangwon-do. The 9th typhoon of the season, however, Jongdari, has developed southwest of Japan's Okinawa. And as the typhoon develops further and moves northwards, it will drop heavy rainfall to southern parts of Korea from tomorrow. And into Wednesday, the south coast and Jeju could see more than 100 millimeters of downpours. And for now, rain is forecast to lash down tomorrow night. So those near the water enjoying a late summer vacation need to stay on high alert. Meanwhile, highs in most parts should hover around 35 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Now, the much-awaited Choseol, the second autumn season term, is this Thursday. But searing heat continues to bake much of Korea, at least through next week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That wraps up our midday edition of Arirang News. Thanks for watching. Daegu.